Hi, this is Lisa Rangel from Chameleon Resumes, a premier executive resume writing company, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about decoding executive recruiter feedback. Now, today's going to be a little bit of a different format. It's going to be less of a list and more of me just kind of talking top of mind and giving you some thoughts to consider. So, when you get feedback from an executive recruiter, and this could be an executive recruiter that's doing search, third-party recruiting, or an executive recruiter that works for a corporation. First, if you're lucky enough to get feedback, because I want to just point out they are not required to give candidates feedback. It's always nice to have, but they're not required to do it. So don't set yourself up to be disappointed by expecting it, or thinking it's required, or even outright demanding it. That's always a little icky, because you're just possibly going to set yourself up to be disappointed. And again, a job search is all about managing your mindset. So don't set yourself up to be disappointed, and be pleasantly surprised when feedback happens. So assuming you're getting feedback, assuming it's happening for you in a particular situation, it's important to keep it in context, right? If a recruiter is a corporate recruiter, they're giving you feedback from the context of how it is to get employed by that particular organization. Now, obviously that can be helpful if you're really interested in working there and you are a good candidate for the culture there. And by good candidate, I mean obviously qualified, but that it meets what you need as a culture, right? Now, I'm not talking about you fitting into a culture and that's riddled with bias. I'm talking about it needs to work for you, right? So the feedback could be feedback that if you were to change, doesn't help you. It helps you fit into a culture that you don't necessarily want. So again, keep the feedback in perspective. Realize the context in which it's coming from. If it's a search firm recruiter that's giving you feedback, that feedback may be important for you to get hired at their client, but it may not be useful to you to change or alter anything about your candidacy to fit in that culture where you may not want to be, right? Ultimately in the long term, despite it sounding good from the outside. So, if you are lucky enough to get feedback, keep it in context, right? Because it's coming from the source that's either their employer or their client, and you might be rejected for very good reason, that it's just not the right place for you. So now if all of a sudden you contort yourself to be pleasing to that type of employer, now you're being pleasing to that employer that is not right for you. So just be careful. Another item I want you to consider is recruiters politely rejecting you. If you are a marketing director that is coming from a prolific background in healthcare, pharma, biotech, all different kinds of healthcare, and you are applying to a job that's for a director of marketing in, say, consumer products or something completely different, automotive technology, right? And you get rejected for that. And they say, oh, they're looking for somebody who's coming out of automotive technology. When you get the answer of they're looking for something that you don't have, right? If that's the format that you're getting the feedback from. But say you've been through a process, right? Say you've gone on a first interview, second interview, third interview, and now in the third interview, the feedback is, they really want somebody coming out of the industry that the company's in, but yet they've known all along that you haven't had that background. That's code, in my opinion, for you didn't really fit the job, or you maybe did something on the interview that didn't resonate with somebody, or somebody was simply just better suited, whether it was by background or by personality fit or whatever the case may be. And the recruiter is taking the easy way out in rejecting you by picking the thing that you absolutely can't fix. Like, you can't all of a sudden, after 20 years in pharma and biotech, turn around and have, some experience in automotive technology, right? So when a recruiter's giving you something that they've known all along, if they give you that early on, I'd say that's more valid feedback than not, because they're just cutting you off at the pass. They're not wasting anybody's time because you don't have X experience. But when they give you that obvious thing later in the process as the reason why you're being rejected, I mean, it could be legitimate, right? The company could have been open to certain backgrounds and certain different scenarios and experiences, viewing that as like an outsider's perspective, looking into their industry, getting a fresh perspective, but maybe then alongside other candidates who had the experience, you just didn't outshine them, right? Or it wasn't worth the risk to them. That's always possible. But I find when the obvious thing is given later in the process as feedback, you're probably being rejected for something that's more about your person and less about your background. Now, what do you do with that information? Just take it for what it is. Take it for what it is and don't challenge it. It's not your people. They are not your people. The company, they, however you want it, whether you think a company is a person or not, they are not your people. And if the recruiter's taking the easy way out, the lazier way out, if you don't mind me saying so, and sometimes it's the kinder way out, right? Because there's certain things about our personalities we can't change. Maybe I shouldn't say lazy. Maybe it's just, maybe in some case it is the kinder way out, right? Because if they're to give you feedback that there's something about your personality or an idiosyncrasy or whatever that you can't fix, what's the point of telling you when you can't fix it, right? Or it's just something inherently in you. So you would rather have a company accept you exactly as you are, with the idiosyncrasies, with the personality traits, and not reject you for those things. So just accept that they're not your people and move on. I know that's hard to do when you need something and you need to land something, or you got to get out of your employer where you're at. But I'm telling you, just move on. Don't latch on to try to change their mind. I think that's unhealthy. And so, some people try to figure out and decode literally, like, what's the feedback mean? Sometimes, I would say most of the time, it doesn't matter. Just go on to find something else. Because when you latch on to a rejection as to why, I'm not saying don't feel it. I'm not saying don't be upset or devastated or sad, but try to do your best to move on from it, knowing that it is probably happening because your better employment opportunity awaits you. And by getting rejected from that one place, it leaves you open to the next thing that's coming. It will just help preserve your heart and your head and prepare you to be of the right mindset for the right opportunity that comes. So, the whole idea of decoding feedback, again, sometimes it helps, but I'd say most of the time it doesn't help. Don't contort yourself to be what people need. Take feedback that you can maybe change little tactics about your presentation or things you say or whatever. That's always just the spirit of improving your performance, but don't contort your general being to fit what people need. Because ultimately you're going to show up on the job that way. And if they have a problem with it in the beginning, I could tell you that problem's not going to go away if you get hired. So there's a fine line between, improving your performance and then contorting yourself into something you're not. And don't let recruiter feedback contort yourself into something that you're not, is my message today. And then if you really want to learn the right tactics and effective tactics that can help you land the right job, so you always have leads coming in, because when you always have leads coming in, then it's easier to let go of the things you get rejected from. Go to my free exec job search training .com. Go to freeexecjobsearchtraining.com and register for my free executive job search training. I have a video a training session that I put up. It's free. Gives you tactics that you can use, showing you how your resume and profile should look, how you reach out to people, what you should be doing, how to effectively work with recruiters. I cover all sorts of things in this free training. If you go to freeexecjobsearchtraining.com, and you'll be able to watch that. And again, it's free. So just opt into there and you'll be able to see it. Don't lose sight of who you are in this process. Don't contort yourself to be something you're not. Again, there's a fine line between personal improvement, performance improvement, and contorting yourself into something you're not. And I just caution you to not contort yourself into something you're not, because you are amazing just the way you are. See you there.